She got her own house. She got her own house. She got her own house.
Hey family, welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to talk about a well overdue topic. We're going to be discussing Naca's surplus and Naca's payment shock. So let's talk about it. So I realized a little while ago that I have skipped over quite a few Naca basic concepts on this channel. So I wanted to change that. I did do the Naca priority versus non-priority video a couple months ago. I'll go ahead and link that up top in case you missed that one. But in the continuation of kind of my Naca one-on-one series, I want to discuss the highly confusing subject of surplus and payment shock. First thing to note is that not every person will have payment shock, but every single person that goes through the Naca program will be responsible for the surplus, okay? So don't be alarmed if you are going through the process and your counselor has not mentioned to you anything about payment shock. That probably means that you don't have payment shock. I personally don't have payment shock. But yeah, so if you don't have payment shock, then you can skip to the next portion of this video. And then if you do have payment shock, definitely stick around because we're going to deep dive into it. So let's start with the easy stuff. Let's get that out of the way. The surplus. So you've actually heard me mention this before in one of my other videos if you checked out my buying a home through Naca in 2022 video, as well as if you listened to my requalification appointment, and I'll go ahead and link that appointment above so that you can check out that live footage of me actually having a conversation with my counselor when I was getting ready to be submitted for requalification. But every single person is required to have an additional $200 left over at the end of every single month from the time you start the program until you close, okay? NACA views this as making sure that you don't have more money going out than you have coming in, and also that you are able to pay for incidental expenses that come up once you become a homeowner, when you can't just call your landlord to fix your refrigerator or to fix the AC, you know, etc., etc. All of those expenses will be on you. So you will be required to save an additional $200 every single month on top of your payment shock, okay? So I almost got in big trouble, blew up my whole process because I got qualified the first time and I had the extra $200, and I went back into for requalification, which I wasn't thinking that would ever happen to me. I thought that I would find a house like that, but it didn't work out for me. So I ended up needing to go back and get requalified. And the counselor that I was meeting with was like, well, I'm not seeing where you're saving your $200 every month. Now, along those lines, you can save your $200 in multiple ways, but my advice to you is if your counselor tells you to save your $200 a certain way, just do it. If your counselor wants you to leave it in your checking account, just leave it in your checking account. If your counselor wants you to move it to your savings account every month, just move it over to your savings account every month, okay? Don't make your process more harder than what it needs to be, but you are not required to move your money every month, or you're not required to leave your money stable every single month. You just have to prove that it's there, but every counselor is different. And just don't make your process more prolonged by trying to go back and forth with your counselor. If they ask you to move it, just move it. If they ask you to leave it, just leave. So you're going to be underwritten multiple times throughout the NACA process, so you can't take your foot off the gas when it comes to your savings patterns, okay? You're definitely obviously going to have to get underwritten when you're submitted for qualification. If for some reason you come back not qualified conditions, then obviously you're going to need to be resubmitted again. You're also going to get resubmitted for credit access once you get under contract. And then obviously if you're like me and you need to get requalified for whatever reason, you're going to have to get underwritten again. So just stay diligent, okay? And realize that NACA doesn't look at savings the same way that you look at savings. And what I mean by that is we may say we're saving because we take $200 and transfer it from our checking account to our savings account every single month. But what you're doing is just moving money. You're not actually saving anything. So the way to go about saving in NACA's terms, okay, is that you are not decreasing anything, any of your income, okay? So you're not just moving money, you're actually saving money or finding extra $200 every month, whether that is by cutting out on different expenses, or cutting out on eating out so much, or canceling your Netflix subscriptions or gym memberships, not ordering Uber Eats as much or taking Ubers as much, different things like that. Or of course, if you have supplemental income, you have a little part-time gig or whatever, you're able to use that part-time gig money to pay for other things, because you cannot use your unqualified, or if you haven't been on your part-time job long enough, then it will not qualify to count towards your income, and you can't use that money. Okay, I know that's probably super confusing, but just know that you can't just move the money. You're actually going to have to show a surplus. Okay, that's why it's called a surplus. Okay, now let's discuss payment shock. I'm going to try to keep this as clear and concise as I possibly can, so y'all please bear with me, okay? But in its simplest form and in a nutshell, all payment shock is if you want to have a mortgage payment more than what you're currently paying for rent, then you will be required to show payment shock. Okay, that's it. Like, I know you're like, wait, what? Why is everybody always so confused? But no, this is it. That's it. That's all it is. Okay. If you are like me and you do not want to pay more than what you're already paying in rent, then you don't have to worry about this, okay? But for those of you guys that do, I'm here to break it down for you. So let's deep dive into it. There's actually an entire section devoted in the Naca workbook to payment shock. I don't know if you can see it right there. It says payment shock, and also the page right behind it as well. Payment shock, okay? So Naca explains it to us in their own words. It's on pages 20 and 21 in the Naca workbook. I'm sure you all have this by now, whether you have a digital copy on your phone or in your email, or you're old school like me and you printed it out. So follow along with me. I did screenshot it on my phone. I'll flash it on the screen now so that you can read along with me, but it is going to be hard to see. So either pause it or go to page 20 and 21, or just listen along, okay? But here's what Naca describes payment shock as. It says, this section demonstrates how to be approved for a monthly mortgage payment that is greater than your current affordable rent, which may allow you to purchase a higher priced home. Naca uses your affordable rent as the baseline to determine your affordable monthly mortgage payment. This represents your proven ability to make your housing payment, and it reflects the balance you have already reached between housing and other needs. Nevertheless, if your current rent is unaffordable or a financial strain, Naca would then use a baseline, a reduced amount that you can better afford over the long term. Okay, so let's pause there. Did you guys notice how Naca repeatedly used the word affordable? Okay, I have viewers and subscribers in my comments often that says to me, I'm already paying $2,000 a month for rent, and Naca only approved me for $1,650. How is this possible? I need an exception. Okay, so remember the video where I told you guys how to calculate your own affordability? I'll link that up top in case you haven't already. But your housing cannot exceed a certain percentage of your income. So yes, you may be paying $2,000 a month for rent, but that may be 60% of your income, your monthly income, going just towards your rent, okay? Naca does not allow more than 33% of your monthly income to go towards housing, okay? That is a new change. It was 31%, and if you're reading along in the workbook, it still says 31%, but check out the video that I posted a couple of weeks ago. I'll link that regarding the change in the affordability increase. But yes, so can only be 33% of your front end income or 40% of your overall total debt, okay? Whichever one is lower. So if you don't have debt at all, then you can't pay more than 33% a month of your monthly income towards your mortgage. If you have debt, your combined debts altogether of things that are showing up on your credit report or being garnished from your checks or whatever, like child support, then it cannot be more than 40% of your income. So just because you're already paying a certain amount in rent, you may not, even if you are willing to do payment shock, you may not still be approved for a higher monthly mortgage amount. So next in the workbook, Naca gives us the formula to calculate what your payment shock will be. So the formula is simply your desired monthly mortgage payment minus what you're currently paying in rent equals your payment shock. Keep in mind the ratios that I just discussed. You can't just pay whatever you want to pay for a mortgage or request to receive a mortgage for whatever you want. It has to be within your affordability. But let's keep reading now in the workbook to see what else Naca says about payment shock. So I'm going to keep reading from page 20. The above monthly savings must be put aside every month until you close, since this monthly savings will be part of your monthly mortgage payment for the next 15 or 30 years or until you sell. By saving the money that will go towards your future housing payment for at least 3 months if you have a history of paying rent, or 6 months if you cannot document a rental history. You get to know and feel what life is like not having these funds. It is very important that you determine whether you are comfortable allocating this amount to your mortgage payment without this having a detrimental impact on the lifestyle you desire. It is important that your savings pattern results in an increase in the total of your bank accounts and other funds, and not the movement of funds from one account to another. It must grow each month by no less than the payment shock savings amount. It can also be reflected in your assets, including stocks and other funds. We will also look to see that the balance in your credit cards has not increased or that you have not taken other loans. Increases in your accounts with a corresponding increase in credit card balances indicates that your savings were borrowed. So let's break this part down. You have to save payment shock, or you have to show payment shock for 3 months if you already have a rental history. 6 months if you do not have a documented rental history because you have been living with family and friends, or maybe you just graduated college and you were living in a dorm room, etc., etc. Okay, so that's first things first. Let's get that out of the way regarding the timeline. And this timeline is before you can be submitted for qualification. Okay, let me just make sure that that part is clear. And then after you have been submitted for qualification, you still have to continue saving that payment shock until you close on your home. So if you are like me and you are doing a new construction home, I have been under contract since October of 2021. My house is not slated to be done until August of 2022. So that means that I would have had to have started saving my payment shock when I first started the Naca program in January of 2021, all the way up until now, and then continuing until I close. So when you think about the big picture of things, if you are doing new construction, if I had payment shock, it would almost be 2 years worth of me saving. Okay, so just keep that in perspective as you're determining what you want your payment shock amount to be, or if you even want to have payment shock altogether. Next, Naca touches on what I mentioned earlier regarding the surplus, that you can't just move money around and that your accounts cannot decrease. Okay, so if you have $1,000 in your bank account when you start the NECA process and you meet with your counselor for the very first time, and then you decide that you want a $500 payment shock. Okay, so for the next 3 months before, or 6 months, depending on your situation, before you can get qualified, your bank account cannot be less than $1,500 every single month when that statement cuts, whenever you have to upload your bank statements. Okay, so you can't just say, I have $1,000 in the bank, I'm going to move 500 over into my savings account, and I'm going to have 500 in my checking account and 500 in my savings account at the end of every month, because that is not savings. That's just $0. That's just moving money from one account to the next. You're going to have to find a way to decrease your other expenses that you already have, or pick up, some side gigs or something, and you can use that money to pay towards other bills, or maybe you can knock out a loan or something, or pay down your car to 10 payments or less, so that it's no longer factored into your DTI, and you can free up money that way. You may have to get creative, because you can't just move money. You're going to have to come up with $500 additional dollars for the sake of this example. Okay, it's just an example. You're going to have to come up with $500 additional dollars every month, on top of your monthly expenses. The last bit that I wanted to break down in that passage that we just read from Naca is the fact that you cannot take on more debt in order to meet your payment shock savings requirements. Okay, you can't just say, fine, I'll go and just start paying all my bills on my credit card. That way my checking account can increase by $500 a month. No, you cannot do that, okay? So just know you're going to have to get creative when it comes to how you're going to show this additional money for payment shock. So now we're going to talk about how lump sum deposits and lump sum withdrawals affects your payment shock. Let's keep reading what Naca says at the bottom of workbook page 20 and 21, at the top of 21, about lump sum withdrawals and lump sum deposits. You should also make adjustments for one-time deposits and one-time expenses, since the payment shock savings need to reflect a regular pattern of savings. Documenting your capacity to afford a higher monthly mortgage payment, it must be adjusted for any lump sum activity in your bank accounts as described below. These are non-regular withdrawals in deposits shown on bank statements that are one-time activities and are not reflective of your regular pattern of savings. They must be tracked, noted, explained, and documented on your bank statement. I already did an entire video where I discuss lump sum deposits and lump sum withdrawals, so I'll go ahead and link that up top now for you to check out. But just know that just because you have a lump sum withdrawal, it doesn't mean that it's the end of the world, okay? Naca may be able to work with you depending on the circumstance. Like, you can't help that your transmission went out, you had been saving your payment shock, and then all of a sudden, bam, you have to go drop, $1,000 at the mechanic or something like that. You are able in certain circumstances to write an LOE, a letter of explanation, and give it to your MC to hopefully be an advocate on your behalf with the underwriter to still get you moving along through the Naca process. And then one thing to note regarding lump sum deposits is that you may say, I'm not saving this additional blank, $500 a month. Let's just use that in payment shock, because I'm going to get my income tax check, here in 2 months, 8 weeks or whatever. So by the time I go back to my counselor, I'll have enough money in my bank account to make it appear like I saved payment shock, even though I didn't. That's a bad idea, okay? Because they're going to see when they review your bank statements in detail that you got an additional just large payment, one-time payment from the IRS, and they are going to deduct it. And say you got $2,000 in income tax returns, but you had $1,000 in your bank, so you're thinking, okay, I'll have $3,000 by the time it's some time for me to be submitted for qualification. But the underwriter will deduct that $2,000, and it will show that you still only have $1,000 in your bank account, and you will get not qualified because you have not met your payment shock requirements. So Naca closes the section in the workbook, the payment shock section in the workbook, with some alternatives to payment shock. So I definitely want to share those with you guys just in case you discover that payment shock isn't for you. So I'll flash it on the screen now. You may discover that it is not worth the sacrifices to take on the higher monthly mortgage payment. If you are unable to save your payment shock, then your monthly mortgage payment will be based on your current affordable rent. If your current rent prevents you from purchasing affordable homes in your area, you can use the Naca buy down option, previously explained, and or grants to increase your mortgage amount without increasing your affordable monthly mortgage payment. If you did not save each month the agreed payment shock savings, it may cause a significant delay in your NACA qualification approval or prevent you from purchasing your desired property. So you have to do what is best for you in your particular situation, okay? There are ways to get creative with it. They do give you credit for paying off debt. I got credit for it, even though I don't have payment shock, but I wish I could show you guys, but it's just way too much of my personal information on my bank application write up from the underwriter. And they gave me credit back for paying down one of my student loans, paying above my monthly payment. So you can go that route by paying more towards your credit cards or paying more towards your student loans or more towards your car loan, etc., to have that count towards your payment shock savings so that you're not just having to sit on that extra money every single month. You can use your 401k contributions to count towards your payment shock as well. But just talk to your counselor and just see if they can help you come up with any type of solutions if you find that you still want to proceed with having a payment shock savings pattern requirement attached to your file. But just know that if you are unable to show payment shock, then you will get not qualified conditions every single time until you can finally get it together, barring any exceptions that you can get for understandable one-time expenses or one-time withdrawals that I just discussed earlier. But that is it, guys. I tried to be as clear and concise as I possibly could. So if I forgot anything, I apologize. But you know the drill. Let's jump down in the comments and talk about it. If you have any questions, if I wasn't clear on something and you need clarification, jump down in the comments and let's talk about it. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and of course subscribe, and I will see you guys in my next video because it takes a village. Cheers.